Well, the conversation in regard to back to school concerns here continues on CTV, specifically on the Twitter jabs. Of course, this comes at a time when the country is experiencing some sort of inflation. So parents are actually quite anxious, and some of the students did go back to school yesterday, but even as we speak, some of the parents are actually taking their children to school. However, the big question is there where the Ministry of Education can actually regulate the fees, even as the country goes through a phase where commodity prices are high, where transport fares are high, where fuel prices are high? And that is the big question that we are asking this morning on the Twitter jabs. Well, joining me at the center of this conversation is a gentleman that I'm very sure that you have seen time and again, and he's none other than Dr. Rogers. Well, he's a social analyst, and today he's also going to be sitting in as a parent as well. Good morning, Dr. Rogers, and thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sunrise at Sea.
Me here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I need to understand, what are your sentiments, or how do you feel about the current state of affairs, of course, in regard to the fact that the government has not been able to regulate school fees?
It's so unfortunate. I talk as a parent of students in UPE, in private schools, and in an international setting.
Okay.
As parents, we really find it so unfortunate that government has failed to regulate the school fees because it is hitting us so hard. And what is very unfortunate that the school fees, even in the public schools, like the ones government has whatever control of, are also not being regulated, and not being regulated by little amounts. I usually so ethical, but this time, Siobhan, I'll even start naming the schools, because it is so unfortunate that the schools sort of have been captured by these, what I would call them, economic mafias. They are interested so much in the profit, and they've disregarded the standard, the quality, and what the parent is passing through.
Okay. So going back to the drawing board, of course, as a parent and a social analyst, what are your thoughts still and sentiments? Now let's look at the general whole, or the state of affairs of a country at whole. The fact that we are going through inflation, the fact that commodity prices are high, we have fuel prices are high, transport fares are high, now children have to report back to school, and we're just recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, it is unfortunate, and like I told you, it's as if as a nation we are moving backwards. I'll give you an example whereby a school, and I told you I'll name them, King's College Budo, increases school fees about by over $500,000. So, and this is a government school, I mean, regulated by government. Then the private ones, it is so unfortunate, the private schools, now for them, they disregard the directions. And even I don't think the very unfortunate thing, I don't think the supervisors are in control, because their own schools, we know some ministers who have schools, and their schools have also hiked school fees, yet what they say is different. It's so unfortunate, because what is happening is that everyone is doing the schools. Now, even from the first term, you know, government came, Ministry of Education came up about the not hiking, and it's as if it was not biting, and these people have already seen the state that actually what they mean is just rhetoric, and they are not implementing. So this time they've disregarded everything. There is no control in that. Some of them even will hide the costs. They will say, okay, this one is not school fees, it's building fund. And some of these private schools have building funds in millions, in thousands of shillings. And many students, as statistics already showed us, have already pulled out of school. And now the private, because the private institutions were not controlled, so the government, the public institutions have been overwhelmed. And they have numbers. Here, St. Peter's in Zambia, I took one of my children there, and in the dormitory, they are about 400 in a dormitory. So it is, government is not in control. I was with one of the inspectors of schools, and they say they have nothing. I mean, these are operated by big by big mafias and big investors. So
Okay.
there is nowhere you can report them. I'll talk about St. Mary's College Chitende, whereby, first of all, after charging the parents all that amount, a lot of money, then they keep the students in school for a shorter time. The unfortunate bit is, in COVID, some parents had paid their school fees. And I'm talking still about Chitende,
Yeah.
where they paid and students didn't go to school. Then the officials of the school withheld the school fees. They say, no, we are paying school teachers money. And so the students, even who did not learn, had to pay school fees again. But where do you complain? No. Where do you complain to?
Doctor, let me put myself in the position of a school proprietor. You're talking about the fact that school fees is being exorbitant and is going high. However, would you blame them for increasing this school fees in a time where we have commodity prices and inflation in the country?
No, I wouldn't, certainly. But like I say, if there was some regulation, there would be proportionate increase. And the increase would be that they increase in proportion to the prices. But because, you remember, these ones are just profit makers, if they are not regulated, they will also go to extremes. And of course, now it comes back to government. Why isn't government regulating prices? Back in the days when we were still studying, there used to be even times when the government then, which these people said, this ruling government says they were incompetent, the government then would distribute. They used to be, Shivanyo Young, they used to be what was called tinned fish in school. It would come, they would come and distribute it in school, free of charge. They used to distribute exercise books. And in this situation we are in, government should be even distributing soap. Because, for example, I was in the market, a box, because now I have many, I have to buy in there. A box of soap is about 140,000. So the box is more expensive than school fees in some schools. So students will go with dirty uniforms, they will not. So now government should even now be looking for ways of distributing soap in schools, so that at least the hygiene, because the hygiene is going to be compromised. These children, will they wash their hands when they are going to the toilet? Those are things we should look at. So we are moving as a nation backwards.
Okay. So as a social analyst, would you say that government's move to, get as an instrument to regulate fees, especially when it comes to private schools, and this comes at a time when the education minister took to her Twitter account, and I'll read this out loud. She said, school fees has continued to be a problem. My ministry will soon be embarking on the process of consulting various stakeholders about the statutory instrument that we have drafted to regulate fees. Do you think this is realistic, and is it sustainable?
Not in this government. Not in this government. This government will not be able to regulate. First of all, look at the way, the spirit of government is that we are emphasizing on investors. The government can only do it when it is in control of the education sector. And this is how they can be in control. Most of the schools would be in the control of government. But right now, even secondary school, primary school, and universities. Most of the universities and primary school and secondary schools are in control of the private sector. And remember, its policy is not to interfere with the private sector. So how are they going to control? The ones they have control of have also failed. They've, for example, I'll give you of a policy whereby right now, government is still paying for the most, they are most privileged, even at university level. Why are you still paying for students from King's College Budo, St. Mary's College Subi, Namagunga for government? Why are you still paying? Because government knows these are the people who go for medicine, these are people who go for engineering. An unfortunate student from the village cannot afford this kind of education. But if it is still paying for these privileged people and leaving out the unprivileged Ugandan, then it is not the government to control these prices. They are simple things which us as education specialists and experts have brought to government, the simple ones, years ago, and they have not implemented it, then this is just rhetoric from the minister. She knows she cannot control it. And that's why we had said we need experts in this ministry.
So is it an issue of the government or the kind of instrument that is being put in place?
One, you know, Uganda has the best policies in one of the best policies in the world.
Okay.
But these policies cannot be implemented, not even the least policy. So the implementation of government is so weak that even if a policy is drafted, it will not be implemented. It will fail on the first day.
Dr. Rogers, don't you think you're being a bit harsh? Okay, moving on in the conversation, and this is a tweet that earlier on I read, and it was coming in from Atim Apun, and he went on to highlight, she went on, I beg your pardon, to highlight, and she said, there is also an issue of a surcharge, where parents and guardians default. Things are already so tight for the common wananchi. Please do away with this. As a social analyst again, but also as a parent, do you think that such charges should be done away with, such as, you actually highlighted it when you were beginning, such as building, because some schools even have a fundraising platforms where not only do you pay school fees, not only do you take requirements, but there is building, there is medical, there is this and this. So do you think this should be done away with?
And the surcharge actually a team is talking about is very unfortunate. I see it in universities, now it has gone to secondary school.
Yes.
It means that if you are supposed to pay 1 million shillings, they say pay it on the first day, and that's an unfortunate thing. If you don't pay it like after 2 weeks, they say 20% charge. So you have to pay an increment of about 200,000. So they've gone, these private proprietors have become like money lenders. So, and the government is not looking at them. I have the list, I've forwarded this list to Ministry of Education and secondary school. Yeah? And it's going now to primary school. These surcharges, these are criminal acts in this era. These are criminal acts. And what we should do, and that's why I'm saying as a public, we should come and expose this, because government will not do anything. And as a public, we find our own ways of dealing with this, either sabotaging their services, because the government will not do it. I can tell you for a fact that the proprietors of this school, they are what we call a mafia state. Most of them, they are sponsors of the ruling government. Big sponsors giving a lot of money to their party during party conferences. So who will talk to them? Most of them are the private investors coming from out there. And you know, right now when you come as a private investor, you first see, go to State House and do all these kind of thing, lobbying and everything. So where are you going to report them? Which CID? If I went as a parent and reported to the police, which CID officer has ability to see a man like Mulindo of Chitende? He's a big man. His income is high to control. So we are under a state of capture where even the education system is being captured and the quality is going to be compromised.
But again, at the end of the day, the constitution does state, and a child will come up and say that I have a right to education regardless of what is going on. So what is the way forward?
The way forward would have been that even in this kind of private operation, the government would now emphasize having subsidized education. But I've told you, it is not there. Even where the president and the first lady, good enough, she's the Minister of Education, talk of no fees, even in the... I'm a parent.
Yes.
of Nsambia here. It's a UPE school. But when I went to calculate the cost of the UPE school, the boarding costs come to 1 million shillings, plus requirements and everything. They come to 1 million shillings, and you call it UPE. Yeah? So we are just in comedy as a nation, and until now government comes up and strengthens itself on the universal primary education, and it becomes universal and becomes free as it was drafted to be, but it is no longer free. And what I mean free is give the students the necessities they need, that because I've told you, distribute soap because they need to wash their uniform. Let there be total zero. If you call it UPE free, don't pay any fees on that. Then again, give equality. I went in that same school I'm talking about, and there are about 100 in a stream, and it is not sizable. So how do you have quality education when you're teaching 100 students in a classroom? Some go to 200. And even those 200, their teacher is a border rider and is not available. So we have no subsidized or public education.
Okay.
And the ones who are privileged, who are getting these, you hear, state house scholarships, they are the privileged one from the privileged families in Uganda. These scholarships are being given by the ministers, the people supporting the ruling party, not to the common Ugandan. He's not getting that.
So you highlighted and you mentioned an aspect in regard to UPE, and you said that if education is indeed supposed to be free, then it should remain free. I mean, they should do away with things such as school fees, they should be able to distribute, but at the same time you said, while giving people or while giving our children quality education. How is that possible? How do we give our children quality education if we are not able to pay the teachers that are going to teach them, if we are not able to use the money that the parents are bringing to be able to get scholastic materials? Don't you think if we made education completely free, that would already be detrimental to our education system?
Do you think we don't have money as a nation? It's just that the people who are in control of the nation don't know what to do with the money. You saw the money going to Lubowa Hospital, which was not built. If it had gone to the education sector, we would now have even those doctors where we don't need to have mafia investors coming in. You think Uganda doesn't have the money? You look at our budget, which has actually multiplied, like the president says, 20 times from the 80s. So as a nation, we have the money to build quality classrooms. We have money to even lobby, because for me, for example, as like St. Peter's in Zambia is next to American embassy. They have a USAID program. How can they leave that kind of UPE? If fire got it in Zambia, it would catch the American embassy. So even the donors should come instead of funding the military. Right now, as a nation, we don't need much investment in the military. We pass that. But even the donors are still funding the military. Even the government, most of the money is going to the military. Education is going to the dogs, and the quality is being compromised.
So as we wind up this conversation, Doctor, let's talk about the aspect of school fees defaulters. I mean, there are parents that have not been able to fully pay or to even complete the tuition for universities and school fees for the lower institutions of learning. And when you delay, some institutions actually give you a fine where if you delay, you pay an extra amount. How do you think this sort of situation should be dealt with?
By now, there would have been a fund whereby it is the responsibility of the government. Because remember, a lot has been invested. And let me tell you, I also operate a school.
Okay.
And the default rate is about 50%. So when these children...
do you regulate fees in the school that you...
In any case, I've looked for many ways of, like I'm doing it on a personal level,
okay, of
making sure those children don't drop out, because I know the cost-benefit analysis. You've already invested in a lot.
Yes.
It is sort of a community school.
Yes.
So if the parents fall out because of fees, so I've tried to get donations here and there so that the children, the learners continue to study.
Okay.
But as a government, what they should do, and I've seen it happen where I got my doctorate in South Africa. It does. I will tell you, for a fact, Shivan, why I'm doing this. The South African government educated me up to doctorate. There was a fund where if you're not privileged, at that time I was not privileged, you could go into the government fund and apply, and they would see if you're deserving.
I see where you're coming from, yes.
So by now, there should be that kind of fund in trillions of money. Instead of giving it to these funny investors, they would give it, there would be an educational fund where deserving students could tap in and ask for the money, and it would be paid, because some even in the private, it would stay in our economy.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is possible, but it is, I think, an intention of, I don't know why they are not applying, because these are things which are done in other countries and they've been successful. Worst case scenario, these learners, some at university, that's the unfortunate thing. If this fund is there, leave alone the similarity of their loan scheme. But by now, if government, for example, is wise, they would have tripled the loan scheme. But even still, it would be similar, whereby now a student can go and borrow, then they will pay. Okay. With time.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rogers, and for always giving much appreciated insight to every single conversation that we have every time on CTV on Sunrise at Sea.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. Well, that wraps up the conversation that we had for you this morning as children go back to school amidst inflation that is being experienced in the country. And I was seated down with Dr. Rogers, and he is a social analyst, and he was weighing down on some of these issues. Otherwise, we take a quick break, but when we return, beauty, wellness, and lifestyle, and we talk the aspect of C, not CTV, but the aspect of sleeping, eating, and exercising. Very important. Keep watching Sunrise at Sea and don't blink.